Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a possible hurricane which is nearing the United States, especially somewhere in between Texas and Mississippi is where we're expecting the landfall to be as of right now. Invest 99L is right now in the southern Caribbean, and it's going to be pulling away further to the northwest. We're going to be timing this out for you guys and tracking this storm, and we're going to have a ton of information in today's video, so make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end. Here's a look at the current National Weather Service page. As you can see, we have some excessive heat warnings in effect for parts of Arizona, California, and Nevada, as well as some red flag warnings in effect for a little bit of Wyoming. We have some air quality alerts scattered around the country in that kind of gray color. And then we have some heat advisories also scattered through parts of Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, as well as a little bit of upstate New York into parts of Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. So we have two different areas where we have those heat advisories in effect. Yesterday, we had a high temperature of 116 degrees in Death Valley, California, with a low temperature of 22 degrees, 35 miles west-southwest of Chote, Montana. The highest rainfall report was in Troy Township, Iowa, where they got 3.45 inches of rain, and there were no snowfall reports yesterday. Here's a look at the National Hurricane Center page, and this is the 5-day outlook. You can see that we have three systems, and we're going to briefly talk about Invest 97L and 98L, and then we're going to mainly focus on Invest 99L, which is down in the Caribbean. Invest 97L, that has a 40% chance of developing within the next 2 days, and within the next 5 days, it has a 70% chance of developing. And then we have Invest 98L, which is in the eastern and central Atlantic. And that one has a 40% chance of developing within the next 2 days, and within the next 5 days, it has a 50% chance of developing. Invest 99L, which is going to be the main focus of today's video, has a 90% chance of developing both within the next 2 days and the next 5 days. So within the next couple of tropical updates from the National Hurricane Center, don't be surprised if this at least becomes a tropical depression within the next few hours, because it certainly has the potential to become one. It already has some fairly strong winds up and around tropical storm force. Still, it's in tropical depression. It would still technically be a tropical depression with the wind speeds, but it is definitely getting up there in terms of its winds. Taking a look at Invest 97L, here's the satellite imagery. Located at 29.5 degrees north by 55.3 degrees west. That's in the north central Atlantic. Maximum winds of 29 miles per hour. Minimum pressure of 1,014 millibars. You can see mainly it's a disorganized area of storms, although there isn't too much blocking it from developing. The good news is that even if it does develop, it's not going to matter because it'll be out to sea. It's in the middle of the Atlantic, so no islands even that it's going to interrupt, mainly just going over the open waters. So really no issues with Invest 97L. Same with Invest 98L. This is getting closer to the easternmost Caribbean, but it does look like it'll curve out just before it hits those islands. It's located at 11.8 degrees north by 38.3 degrees west. Maximum winds of 29 miles per hour with minimum pressure of 1,008 millibars. And you can see this one's a little bit more well developed, so there is a little bit more rotation on that storm, and you can see that it is a little bit more organized in terms of the convective thunderstorm activity within that storm. So this one probably has, I would say, a better chance of impacting any land, although both of them are out to sea. So the only way that Invest 98L could impact land is if it stayed due west and it moved into parts of the Lesser Antilles. It does look unlikely as of now, however. Taking a look at our next storm, which is Invest 99L, this is the main one that we want to focus on. It's located at 15.1 degrees north by 77.8 degrees west. If we look at the maximum winds, it's at 35 miles per hour, and it has a minimum pressure of 1,006 millibars, and the movement is unknown as of right now, so we don't know how fast it's moving. Just based on the satellite imagery, it's not moving too quickly. Just about a couple days ago, it was back into the eastern Caribbean. Now it's in the central and western Caribbean, so it is moving a little bit quicker, but again, it's still moving at a fairly slow clip. And again, 35 miles per hour. So if you get that up to 39 or 40 miles per hour, then you're at tropical storm status. It is fairly disorganized as of this point. You do have some high levels of convective activity within the storm. So you do have some thunderstorms within the storm that is creating some of those higher wind speeds. But ideally, if you want development of the storm, which personally I don't, because I know it's going to cause some issues if it does develop, but if you want development of the storm, you would want to see this kind of wrapping up a little bit. And I think one of the reasons it is kind of weakening as right now, not weakening, but staying pretty much the same, is because it's over some higher terrain, which is shown over Jamaica. Jamaica does have some tall mountains. You also see that for eastern Cuba, which is where some of the taller mountains are over Cuba. So eastern Cuba has some higher terrain, and it just passed over parts of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. It passed to the south of there, but some of the northern thunderstorms of this event did pass over this area, which also has some higher terrain. So once it gets past this area of the Central Caribbean, where you have all your Caribbean islands, once it passes through there and it starts heading to the northwest into that area between the Yucatan Peninsula and western Cuba, it does have a good shot of developing, because there's not really a lot impeding it. Even if it crosses over land over the Yucatan Peninsula briefly or western Cuba, it's a very flat environment. And also, you're still probably having at least some portion of the storm on water over that time, because of how large the storm is. So even if it's passing through here, and let's say it clips parts of western Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula, there's probably a good 70% of that storm that is still over water, so it's still going to at least sustain whatever wind speeds it's at. And then you're going into much warmer waters in the Gulf of Mexico. If we look at the track of the storm, we're going to hope that this moves over parts of western Cuba, or that this moves over the Yucatan Peninsula, because that would mean it would weaken before it has a chance to become too strong. Worst case scenario would be that it moves through this strait right here in between the Yucatan Peninsula and western Cuba. Again, that would mean that it would stay over water pretty much the entire time between now and its track somewhere between Texas and Mississippi, possibly looking at Louisiana for an impact zone or a landfall zone. So again, we're going to hope that this kind of curves out further to the east or to the west, or that this storm just ends up weakening. And that is a possibility. We saw with Hurricane Henry, which moved into the northeast. Originally, we were expecting it to curve into the northern Atlantic. We were not expecting any impacts on land from that storm. And then we saw that quickly, 24 to 48 hours, it was all it took for this to completely shift further to the west. So we could see something like that again here, but again, we're only 2 or 3 or 4 days out from this making a near approach to the Gulf Coast. So there's not a lot of time for this to change. If we look at some of these models for their zones for where this could impact and make landfall, here's the GFS. You can see this is the easternmost of all the main models that we're going to look at. We're going to look at 5. We're going to look at the GFS, the European, the NAM model, the Canadian model, I believe, and also the German model. So those are the 5 models that we're going to take a look at in today's video for the track of the storm. So you can see the GFS has this as a fairly strong storm. I would assume that's probably at Category 2 status, just based on the wind speeds, although I can't be for sure. These are the 850 HPA winds. The reason I put that up, it's going to be a little bit higher than the surface winds, but the reason I put that up is because it's a little bit easier to see exactly where that center is. So this is, again, a 2,000 or 3,000 feet up. You would probably want to subtract, I would say, 10 knots from whatever you see on the screen. So it'll be a Category 1 or a Category 2 hurricane based on the GFS. If we look at the Canadian model, you can see how this one is a little bit further to the west, and you can see that it's just southwest of where the GFS had it. If we look at the German icon model, you can see that one is even further to the west, pretty much actually a fairly similar track to what the Canadian model had. And this would all be as of Sunday morning when the landfall may happen. I would say probably Sunday afternoon is a better time frame for this landfall if I had to make a prediction. And then if we look at the European model, you can see how that one is further west of all of these as of right now. This is the most recent model run. These are the most recent model runs that I could find. And then if we look finally at the NAM model, which overblows these storms. We saw that with Hurricane Henry, where it was showing almost a Category 3 storm. Definitely did not happen in that case. We saw maximum winds up near 70 miles per hour, but in this case, the NAM model showing a fairly big storm, but not as convective, not as strong. It would still be a Category 1, although those are still very strong winds, so you want to pay attention to that. Here's a look at the plot. Again, all of these different dots indicate a different model that we just did. So you can see how most of them are within this narrow area where you would be expecting a cone forecast that would impact these zones right here. So you would be expecting that the landfall would happen somewhere within eastern Louisiana, central Louisiana, or also into southern Mississippi. I would say in areas into Alabama and Florida out of the picture as of right now, although you may get clipped with the storm. And then into Texas, that is still an outside chance that something near there would be impacted with landfall. Taking a look at the intensity forecast on this storm, you can see that we currently have most of these models bring this up to at least Category 1 status. We have a few, maybe just 2 models bring this only to tropical storm status, but the majority have this at Category 1 or even low-end Category 2 status. So that is still a possibility. I believe that would be I'm not sure, but I believe that would be the first Category 2 storm of this hurricane season so far. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that would be the first Category 2 storm. And then if we look at the wind shear, which is basically showing you the difference in wind direction based on the height in the atmosphere. So, for example, at the surface, you may be dealing with winds coming out of the east. You go 4,000 or 5,000 feet up, you may be dealing with winds on the west, coming out of the west, and that could create toppling in the storm, could create some imbalance over different layers of the atmosphere. If you're dealing with winds again coming out of the east, you're going to be dealing with a storm that is a little bit more tilted, and that does cause these storms to weaken. So looking at the 200 millibar winds, the wind shear, and this is about 30 or 40,000 feet up, you can see that we do have a little pocket when it's crossing over that kind of narrow area between the Yucatan Peninsula and I would say the Bahamas. There is a little area of wind shear that could disrupt the storm it might disrupt the storm a little bit, but I'm not expecting the wind shear to have too big of an impact on the storm, mainly because it's going to have a lot of time to develop as it's over those Gulf of Mexico waters. If we look at the total precipitable water anomaly, this is a good way of indicating where troughs and areas of drier air are. So you can see that this would be for this morning, so you're basically looking at what we're expecting right now. And you can see that we have that storm that's south of Jamaica. So this is Invest 99L. This is the storm that we're watching for right here. And then if we look just to the west of there, you can see a deep area of troughing. So if we're just going to follow these wind barbs, here's what the troughing looks like generally. So you have a little bit of a trough digging into that western Caribbean area. So basically from the Bahamas to southern Mexico is where we have that trough. And that could disrupt the storm a little bit. You can also see that dry air which is associated with that. As we get up into the United States, you do have a little bit of high pressure which is into the western part of the Gulf Coast. That is going to be pulling away to the northeast, so that is not going to be too big of a player into this storm, although it may have it slow down just a little bit, so that high pressure could have some impact on the storm. But again, I think it's that troughing and that little air mass of drier air down into the western Caribbean and areas northeast of there that will probably have a big impact on the storm. But again, looking at the central and northern Gulf of Mexico, still looking fairly nice for tropical development. So it looks like as you get past that western Caribbean area, this is the main impact zone. This is the main zone where we have the most worries for its development. If it can get past here and still be a decent tropical storm, maybe a high-end tropical storm, then this is going to have potential to reach up near high-end Category 1 or even Category 2 status. So this area right here is going to really make or break the storm, and I think that's where a lot of the models will have some issues trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen with this trough right here. That could cause some issues within the models and could create some variability in the track. If we look at the sea surface temperatures, you can see that we're dealing with 30 degrees Celsius waters anywhere from here northward. So right around that black line right here is where you have 30 degrees Celsius waters or higher. That's approximately 91, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's fairly warm waters. And then you have a little pocket, which you always see this pretty much where right along the Gulf Coast you have those warmer waters than the areas in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. You have water temperatures here that are 31 or 32 degrees Celsius. That's closer to 92, 93, 94 degrees Fahrenheit, even higher in a few of those spots. So it probably won't have time to develop over those waters, but you look at the central and again the northern Gulf of Mexico, and you have those really warm waters. The reason that we have this area of cooler waters is because we saw Hurricane Grace go through here, and it upwelled some cooler water from the bottom of the ocean. So I don't think this will have a big impact on the storm, mainly because it's already a fairly small patch, and then you go just north of there and you go back into the warmer waters. So again, I think the sea surface temperatures also won't have too big of an impact on this event. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. If you have any photos from any specific weather events or anything interesting that happened over the past couple of days, send them over to my email address, which is in the bottom of the description, and you might be featured for the weather photo of the day. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking the video and subscribing, as well as turning on notifications so you never miss another video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.